Hola, hola, buenos dias, G&Gs. My name is Trekk with 2Ks. This is Weekend Crypto, which is brought to you here on the Gentleman of Crypto YouTube channel, if you don't know. And so the basic idea behind this segment is I cover weekend crypto news events that happen between Friday and Sunday. And so recorded late Sunday night, push it out, Monday morning. Nonetheless, before I get into those stories that happened this weekend, I do want to say I have a great appreciation and gratitude for the folks who are still tapping in to this segment in regards to weekend crypto. I appreciate the lurkers. I appreciate the trolls. I appreciate the folks who are giving a thumbs up. I appreciate the folks who are doing the reshares. I really do appreciate that because that lets me know, as well as King and Zay, that hey, people are paying attention to my segment as well as the overall channel, and folks are still interested in getting some insight on these various news stories on things that happen within the space, and they value the context that we give and that I'm given for my segment, at least in relation to how I'm interpreting these stories. So I would just want to say thank y'all. I appreciate. And yeah, keep sharing, keep liking, keep leaving the comments. Lurkers, keep watching. We appreciate y'all. Trust me, the numbers show. Okay, we appreciate. And so let's jump into this first joint right here. And yeah, so generally I stay away from price talk stuff, but this kind of caught my attention for I wasn't really sure. There are things that FTX does as a company that don't always sit well with me, but nonetheless, as a business, they're on their game, right? Like, just read this. FTX revenue reportedly grew 1,000% in 1 year. Leaked documents revealed. We're not going to worry about the leaked documents. Basically, they get into the number stuff as far as saying, hey, the revenue breakdown discloses that 1,842.85% increase in operating income for FTX from 14 million to 272 million in a physical year 2020 to 2021. Now, in the overall, yes, FTX has definitely been on the tear. Sam Bankman-Fried has been seen as like the miracle child for the exchange industry. And yeah, here's what got me though. I'm not really going to get into this now that I think about it as I was reading it, as I'm thinking about it now while I'm saying this to y'all. I initially thought I was going to do it, but I don't really care about this part of it. Here's the part that you really got to pay attention to. This part right here. This part right here. And what I find interesting is I feel like CZ has been doing these little sideways jabby things to various personalities and companies within the space. This right here, I'm gonna read it for those of y'all in case you might be somehow looking at the podcast or not paying attention to your screen right now. Sorry, listening to the podcast. Just learned a new word, jitters. On one particular exchange, sometimes your orders will be stuck for a bit and a few other orders will get in front of you. Apparently, this happens often enough on this exchange that traders coined a term for it. Jitters, quotation marks, front running. And then the whole like the circle with the line through it saying no. One, this is not the only platform. Let me start back one and I'm gonna move on to the next thing real quick. CZ has his moments where he throws out some of the like he spills the tea. And this particular thing is not a new thing. If those of you who pay attention and remember just a couple weeks ago, there was the story about that a study that came out that saying that the mining pool, what was it, fish two pool or pool fish, they were doing some funny thing with how they were able to do picking and positioning of the transactions. This is just the exchange version of it, which has been going on for how long now? Robinhood arguably does something like this. Remember, you're in their ecosystem. They write the front end to work however they want that benefits them. So he's spilling the tea, but it's not like, you know, it's not a known thing. So we're going to move on from that one. So next joint, South Africa Central Bank grants local banks permission to serve crypto clients. I read this, and one of the things that is seemingly running across my mind in a lot of the stories that I am hearing in relation to crypto, and not a relation to crypto, but traditional finance and things along that line is, and I've been saying this for months, capital flight controls. I'm gonna get up close and say it again. Capital flight controls. They'll argue it out in various different ways. X amount of times, they're not even going to say the phrase capital flight controls. But if it's about being able to keep track as well as find out how much you have and what you're moving, at the end of the day, considering the bigger economic situation, it's capital flight control. There was a story the other day with, who was it? It was something with India. And they were making the accusation that an exchange or a company that was outside of the Indian jurisdiction had a sub company that was in their jurisdiction, and they had entities that were using that company, the sub company, to move capital out of the Indian government jurisdiction. They labeled them under an illegal like activity thing, but they never gave the name of these projects or these companies. It was about capital flight control, and they weren't getting their cut of the money because they weren't going through the traditional banking system. I'm going to argue in regards to this particular story. I'm sorry I went around the world on this. Let me just say, here's the headline real quick. Not the headline, but the first line. South African Reserve Bank, SARB, has directed financial institutions in the country to serve customers handling cryptocurrency transactions. Now, if you paid any attention to how South Africa and actually most of Africa has been working out, they went very opposite, minus like the Central African Republic, who only recently did what they did, for how they were looking to deal with cryptocurrencies in their traditional financial system. In the overall, I said what I said as far as you're going to see different countries and jurisdictions move how they move in terms of some are going to be pro, some are going to be anti, and then some are going to try to ride the line for a while because the OFAC report came out last year. I'm going to keep talking about this OFAC report, Office of Financial Asset Control or Commission. I don't remember what the C is right now, but it's based out of here in the States. It's under the Treasury Department. The point being is that this thing happens, right? Regulators' friendly stand towards crypto. At the same time, regulators have upheld a friendly approach to cryptocurrencies, exploring the sector's use case. Okay. As reported by SARB Deputy Governor Kuben Nayado, I might be saying that way wrong, confirmed that the country is set to roll out cryptocurrency regulations that will partly support the sector and incorporate it into the financial space. What he is basically saying is, we are going to figure out how to get more of the liquid capital that is moving around in the physical money system, because most of South Africa's population does not use traditional bank. Let me say it this way. Most of the financial activity that goes on within South Africa is done in a cash in hand setup. That money velocity, they can only estimate for how much of it is moving around that they cannot tap into with the traditional banking system. So this is really about, hey, if a nickel bag gets sold in the park, I want my cut. This is what we see as adoption, y'all. Just saying. It's a double-edged sword. It's happening, but it's happening in a way to bring people back into the fold. This isn't about economic sovereignty. This isn't about giving people economic stability. This is about bringing them back into the fold. We can argue this whole thing about, stopping bad actors, but there's never been a system, whether you're talking about financial criminal stuff or we talking about like physical criminal stuff, that actually stops criminal activity. It only throttles it. There's a difference. Moving on to the next thing. I got a number of stories to cover here. So hackers exploit zero-day bug to steal from General Bytes Bitcoin ATMs. This story got my attention, and I'm gonna tell you here's why it got my attention. Because I was looking at things from, what is that, late Friday? No, not really. I really started looking on Saturday for stories to cover. This story was nowhere in the mix. And I'm gonna tell y'all, this is one of the sites that I use to aggregate news data. And this story was nowhere on that radar. And it literally will update in minutes to hours. And I can go back days. This was nowhere on there. So it makes me wonder about like, why wasn't this covered by anybody? Because according to Cointelegraph, this came out today, like 16 minutes ago. If I refresh this, what is it gonna say? Let's see. But anywho, the point of this whole thing for this zero-day exploit hack is that, 2 hours ago, but nonetheless, it was today. This event actually happened on the 18th. Or at least that's when it was reported in the public. That's when they said something on their website. So the basic idea is that ingenuitive scammers and hackers, they figured out how to do a zero-day exploit, which basically allowed them to get admin rights within the server setup that GB uses, General Bytes uses, all right? And so they were then able to change how the transactions, whether somebody was selling or buying, whether the incoming crypto would be able to be rerouted to their personal wallets. That's the basic idea of what happened. So if you have one of these near your area, you might want to stay away for a little bit. You might want to go check out the website. Not saying this is financial advice, more about some level of doing your due diligence. PSA, do your due diligence on what ATMs you're going to. That's the bottom line on that one. That happened. And technically it happened last week, but no one said anything until today. I don't know why. All right, so this story, when I initially picked it up, I didn't actually read it right away. And today when I was looking over it again to see if I was actually going to keep it in the mix, here's why I kept this in the mix. For the most part, this is really just a fluff story. I'm going to say this again. This is really just a fluff story. Then it gets into, do you get how to read between the lines and see when certain things like pop up? What does it mean when you start putting it in with other information that you're aware of? This is where I'm going with this. So yeah, we know about JP Morgan. Standards Bank, well, it's actually Banco Standard, which is actually a bank out of Europe. It's Portugal, I think. But they've definitely been moving into space in the last couple of months more publicly. BlackRock, we all know about what they've been doing. Schwab's, we all know about that name. Chipotle, I find a Chipotle ad in a little funny, not gonna lie. It has the market appeal, right? It's a pop culture food brand that folks here in the States know. Check out, I don't use them, but I imagine folks know. Here's what really caught my attention. These two, number 8 and number 7. Why? Pardon. Because when you start having retirement systems and pension funds move money into a new quote asset that can yield return for them, they're not talking about, oh, we just drop in 10K, 50K. They talking about millions. They're talking about being able to set up systems of funneling the money in to figure out where they can place it and get a return that initially works for the upfront person. This right here tells you that adoption of crypto is happening. And I'm gonna read it for those who might not be looking at the screen or whatever. But the number 7 is Fairfax County Retirement System, a USD 6.8 billion pension fund from Virginia. That's here in the States. For those of you who are across the water, for those of you who are up north, for those of you who are down south. And when I say south, it's south of the Mexican border, south of the US-Mexican border. We talking about 6 billion, a little bit more than 6 billion, nearly 7, right? So US has said that it is looking to invest in lending markets, calling the yields that can be achieved with crypto yield farming strategies really attractive. Here's the funky part about that. They're realistically, they're not talking about the numbers when it was like, oh, 25% return on the yield, 75% return on yield, 399% return on the yield. They're not talking about those numbers, but whatever numbers or for whatever lending platforms they get into, it is going to be dumb money better than what the traditional setup is. That's what they're looking at. So they know once the regulation really hits in, they still gonna make a killing until the model don't work no more. That's what I'm gonna say. Because the real money is made for doing the consulting to get the retirement system manager to pick the options that you advise them as good lending platforms or trusted lending platforms or whatever. The consulting firms are walking away with the bag on this one. Same thing here for the pension fund situation. Ontario's teachers pension plan board Another pension plan organization that appears to be taking an interest in the crypto space is the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan Board. With an investment in the major crypto exchange, FTX is going to be in a number of retirement fund portfolios in this decade. I'm not saying this as financial advice. I'm more so saying this as a warning, really. But nonetheless, I'm just some guy on the internet who wears shades, right? Don't worry about me. This to me is the sign of adoption happening, but I don't think people really understand. You know what's funny? You can do this yourself, folks. You can do this yourself. If you DCA'd in, and I'm not giving you financial advice, I'm just saying you can do what your pension management people are going to lose. Ooh, you know what? I'm not going to run down that rabbit hole. I'm just saying this is definitely a sign of adoption. Jumping on to the next thing. This other story kept in because when I was reading it, it wasn't making 100% sense to me when I first picked it up, I think on late Friday, and then I had to read through it. The reason why I kept this story in too, and I know X amount of y'all out there are the ADA fans and Cardano's like, oh yeah, Cardano's the next Ethereum killer, blah, blah, blah. Here's why I kept this story in. Because Cardalania partners with Ready Player Me. I don't know who Ready Player Me is. I never heard of Cardalania until today, not today, but until I read this article piece. And here's what I walked away with from this, especially after I read this particular part right here. So it says, in a press release issued on that day, which was the August 19th. So that was during this past week, which was on Friday. Here's how they define the terms of metaverses. This is what Cardalonia is saying, that a metaverse is a network of 3D virtual worlds focused on social connection, facilitated by the use of virtual and augmented reality headsets and blockchain assets that would ensure the scarcity and immutability of in-game assets. Here's the thing, folks. I'm gonna jump up close on this with y'all. Here's the thing. Metaverses existed before what we know and understand as blockchain and crypto stuff today. Okay. Diablo was out a while ago. Minecraft been around for however long. Second Life, like they literally have like thousands of people on in any given hour of the day. Okay. This is all pre-crypto. And so the way that they're defining it, I just totally took that and threw it out the window and said, all right, so this is not really about info. This is actually a marketing piece. This is a placement piece. And why I bring this up to y'all is that, and I'm not saying this as financial advice, I'm saying this as when you are reading these articles, when you are looking through these news stories, when you're doing your due diligence and you're going to CoinDesk or Cointelegraph or even this joint here, Crypto Global, it's one thing to read it as a just regular newbie person, but when you're doing your due diligence, you got to start being able to distinguish when these pieces are actually placement pieces. It's a marketing thing. And they're trying to get the word, aka the pump out there to get people to buy into what this thing is. And I'm not saying it's going to be a bad thing. I'm just saying understand how this news is being presented to you, how this platform is being presented to you. Is it going to be the largest metaverse on Cardano? I don't know. They might be for 6 months, and then month 7, somebody else come in and just sweep them under. I don't know, but just saying, this happens in the space. This came out this weekend, something you might want to be aware of, because you might jump in it now and then 9 months from now, they have the crazy hack. I don't know. Not throwing any dirt on their name, just saying you got to put these things in the context, and it's a lot going on in the space right now. All right, so this next joint jumping in on is, so largest Ethereum miner, Ethermine, stops processing sanctioned transactions. So this basic story goes into how they are not producing blocks with Tornado Cash transactions. It does not mean there are not blocks out there that have Tornado Cash transactions in it. What is going on is the ones that, and this is under the proof of work, because they're still at the proof of work part right now. So, excuse me, the idea that the mining pool, which is what Ethermine is, that they're choosing the transactions to add into the block, to build into the blockchain and push on forward in the proof of work. This article is actually long, but the bottom line is That's what they're doing. And this is as, quote, a result of what the OFAC sanction list came out as. And the funky part of it is the companies technically does not fall under OFAC jurisdiction. They are in a country that has their own set of compliance and regulations thing, but nonetheless, there is still the bigger picture of transportation laws, which fall under the anti-money laundering laws, regulations that function on a global level. And this situation right here is not community policing. I'm going to argue this is not community policing in the sense of the arguably better thing to have happen is for entities that deal with the layer one stuff stay as neutral as possible. But this is highlighting that they are not staying neutral and they're doing what they're doing, arguably in the name of making sure that their business can still function, arguably in that they are protecting their pool of end users who use their platform to be a part of the mining pools. So it could be a US based user. Imagine if they kept doing it with the transactions and then they get the shoulder tap to be like, hey, we want to get a list of all your people who are US based residents. And then the government turns around and goes after all of them. That could be a possible scenario. That could be an argument they go with. The point is, this is happening now. There is censorship happening based on the companies that are the infrastructure part of this space. Arguably, this same thing could happen in Bitcoin's protocol because of how many businesses do the mining pool scale level stuff. It's not to say that you still don't have the individual miners, but this would be an attack surface for any protocol that works on a proof of work setup. Just want to point that out there. I would also argue that this is going to make, how do I want to say this? I don't even care about what Vitalik said right now. Although I will say I do agree that the infrastructure layer players should work to stay as neutral as possible. But understandably, there is the thing of I'm a business and I have to be able to still function and thrive in the space, whatever, and you work on the jurisdictions. Where I want to go with this one is this type of action goes to something that a couple weeks ago, it was a story that came about with the report about how F2 Pool, Fish Pool, they're another mining pool setup. They were able to do some notable things, which was already known about within the mining pool circles for the Ethereum network. And they were specifically named. Nothing was said about this company here, which is Ethermain. But at the end of the day, these companies are working in their own self-interest. It's not about, I'm gonna go back to saying it again. It's not about the mantras. It's not about the social good. It's not altruistic. And they don't care about none of the cypherpunk views, none of that stuff. They're a business who's trying to get as much money out of this system as they can while it still works. That's that. I'm gonna leave it on there, but if you're doing, let me jump back one. If you are doing the mining pool thing, you might want to start figuring out what are you gonna do if you see this happening in other mining pool setups where it becomes a thing to do, which I argue that this is a bad precedent. This is a bad behavior. This is not in the best interest of open sourceness, of distributed like technologies. This is not in the overall good for the community, in my opinion. Don't have to agree with me. I'm okay with standing alone on this one. I really am. But anywho, for you minor folks, I'm talking about the individual folks. Y'all gonna have to figure out something, because if they tap the companies and then they keep implementing things at that level, this is a protocol level thing. You already have companies that are doing it where they're stopping you on the front end to be able to interact with the blockchains. Now this is actually at the blockchain level. It's going to be an interesting decade, y'all. It really is. Jumping on to this next story. So top stablecoin Tether, aka USTD, slashes commercial paper holdings, increases cash and bank deposits. So I'm going to run through a couple of little highlights on this one. As far as in accordance with the promises it made earlier this year, top stablecoin issuer Tether has begun to slash its commercial paper holdings. Jumping into this next highlight. The report was completed with a member firm of DBO, one of the largest public accounting networks in the world. Now, I was on a live stream earlier with CB, aka Crypto Blood. Shout out to the big homie. He is a friend of the channel. I also contribute on his channel, by the way. So just so y'all are aware, and that, what do we call it? Full transparency. And we were talking about this, and I didn't know what BDO was. I still don't know what the acronym is, but for what he was breaking down is they are a major global accounting firm. And when they run your numbers, it's real. So my takeaway in this story of how Tether is looking to get back into having cash on hand, it's something that's going on across the board. It is not just a crypto thing. Companies are going, hey, we need to work out getting that dry powder together. We need to be able to ride out what this recession thing is, whether you want to just say it's a thing solely within the crypto space and the whole contagion thing. No, it's like this is beyond crypto winter. This is beyond terror. Like it's a bigger thing going on globally in all sectors and industries across the board. And I think that this is one, if not a part of Tether's bigger strategy on how to make it through what will be playing out in the rest of this decade as we move forward. Depending on what you're paying attention to and who you're paying attention to, we are technically in a recession. But then if you listen to what the White House says, they cannot define what a recession is. So I don't know who you believe. I don't know who you follow. I just know when I start to see certain patterns of behavior, I know something's up. They're not the only ones doing this. And this is arguably them setting themselves up to, one, either acquire talent, which is human capital, that's the people. So bringing on some new blood into the C-suite level stuff, as well as expanding markets for when things start to look a little bit more sunny on the other side. They're going to start pushing heavy. Latin America, Asia, Europe is going to happen. Or they're going to acquire other technologies or companies. That's just how it goes. So I'm gonna leave that one there to say, yeah, Tether's doing something, and we're gonna see how it plays out in the next 15 months. Jumping on to this next joint, FDIC. If you don't know about the FDIC because you are overseas, basically here in the States, what we have happen is there is a agency that has the responsibility of financially guaranteeing deposits in financial institutions, mainly at the retail level. And so what happened here is the FDIC orders crypto exchanges FTX US and 4 others to cease misleading claims. What they're saying is these companies, FTX US, which is separate from FTX, ironically enough, Sam Bankman-Fried is, I think, the CEO of both of those companies. Even though they're separate, he's the guy in charge of both of them. Now, the other companies that they named in here, I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. Like smartassets.com, never heard of them. FDIC, crypto.com, never heard of it. Crypto news, there's 101 different news things, whatever. Here's where there's some caveats that I want to add in. One, if a traditional bank in the States goes under, let's say Wells Fargo went under, the whole budget for the FDIC recovery to pay out to the depositors of said bank, it wouldn't be enough. That's because there's so much over leveraging and accounting magic going on in traditional banking that if one bank went under, it would not be enough of what the FDIC has to, quote, insure the depositors. Just saying. So now we get into this thing about the crypto stuff. We still not there. We got money floating around, but we not there. Now, what I really thought was interesting about this particular thing and where I'm going with this is not to read the whole thing. It is a lengthy article. You can definitely find it on CoinDesk when you're ready. Is that Sam Bankman-Fried's response was, "Oh no, we weren't clear and we weren't trying to mislead the people." And honestly, what we were trying to say was that the banks that we deal with are FDIC insured. Your man is playing the game, and it's not even in this one. It was another joint that I was looking at that basically they covered the tweet that he used to clarify it was a mistake in how they were presenting this public relation to being FDIC, which means that they were insured as far as for the depositors of their platform. And yeah, this is the BS that's going on right now. This happened over the weekend. The real big name to pay attention to is FTX. And like I've said, they do certain things that I don't think are copacetic, but on a business front, it's almost like fair game. There's certain things that they've been doing that I'm just like, wow, you do got to respect the level of astuteness and like business savvy. But there's other parts where just come on now. That was one of those, we're gonna keep it moving until somebody actually stops us. That's it. We're gonna keep it moving until somebody actually says something. Until then, keep it trucking. So yeah, if you got money with FTX, if you got stuff on that platform and any of the other ones that was named, just know none of them are actually FDIC insured. That, by the way, again, on a stream earlier with CB, technically it's on Sunday. This is going to be airing out on a Monday now. But Gemini is also in the same boat of they are not FDIC insured, or at least according to the FDIC, Gemini is not insured by them as far as money for depositors. Just saying, something else you might want to look into. But moving on to this last story. Here we go. Last story it is. Oh man, I am definitely running on time today. I'm sorry about that. But here we are. Last story. Aztec responds to claims FTX froze users' funds for interacting with the protocol. Aztec is supposed to be a privacy protocol. And the bottom line is that FTX was allegedly, let me say allegedly, because this story actually updated when I reopened the screen again. It updated and some of the things changed, and I really wish I would have screenshotted what they had earlier, but whatever right now. The bottom line is the legitimacy of the account suspension was discussed in an earlier article here on Crypto Slate. FTX CEO Sam Bankman-Fried responded, but neither confirmed nor denied that any accounts were frozen. Yo, I'm telling you, like, this dude, I would almost argue he's doing his version of what they were saying Arthur Hayes was being mad cocky about. Yo, my platform is dope. I could do what I want to do right now. Like, Sam Bankman-Fried is on his Arthur Hayes, yo. In the heyday, like, I feel like that's where he at, but he doing it in a way where I'm not gonna flat out be like, yo, I'm gonna thumb my nose at you and screw y'all, but I'm gonna do what I do. I'm gonna run this company. I'm gonna make this money. I don't care about any of the ethos and none of that stuff in the crypto space. I'm gonna make this money and do what I do. And so here you have it that he's saying, yeah, to be clear, it is getting garbled. We are constantly monitoring transactions for AML compliance and do enhance due diligence on certain transactions, but that does not mean that any accounts were frozen. That man gave the straight, let me ride the line, PR line, where you're not going to hold me accountable for stuff, but I'm going to still say things to show a level of confidence in my company and that we are taking certain actions, but you're not going to hold me down on it. Again, tweets, AMAs, fireside chats, public, speaking on main stage stuff, those are not done under oath and they hold no weight when you bring these things back up. Like, that's me saying that. The last thing to go on with this is that, where was it? It was something else that I wanted to jump on about this. Oh, so Aztec Protocol, was it this line? Okay, yeah. Aztec further commented that it is working on a series of improvements that will practically eliminate the ability of bad actors to move stolen funds through Aztec. These include deposit caps, rate limiting, pending deposit caps, and modifying the escape hatch window. Basically, what they're saying here is we're going to start putting in censorship tools that will throttle the ability of what we might consider bad actors based on how the algos read the patterns of behavior. At the end of the day, they're implementing more centralization tools to control capital flight. Because here's the funny thing about how algos work. An algo doesn't say, oh, this is a bad actor, this is a good actor. An algo only says, hey, it checked the box. Did it move X amount of transact? Did this account or this wallet address move a certain amount? Did it move at a certain time of day? Is it a pattern of how it's doing it? Is it from a certain region? Is it from based on a certain IP address? All of these different things go into that. And now what this company is saying, Aztec in particular, is that, hey, we're going to do things to be able to control the funds more, but we're not going to call it more centralization. We're not going to call it capital flight control, because at the end of the day, that's bad PR. And here's how they hit you with the virtue signaling shit. The network declared, if our network is used to harm users, we failed our mission. It also confirms working with partners to identify those using stolen funds and unmask them using publicly available information outside of the Aztec system. Here's the line that's the killer. If privacy is outlawed, only outlaws will have privacy. They are literally virtue signaling, in my opinion, and how they're trying to spin it around to be like, listen, we're not going to say we implementing more controls, but we're implementing more controls to be compliant because we a business. That's it. All right. I'm going to leave the stories on that. Sorry for the long run on it, but there's a number of things that happen, and we got to have these context perspectives on these things. So last thing being is August 30th, so myself and 3D are doing the digital realty webinar. And the basic idea is we're telling folks about the basics of the metaverses and how you can get in and be a part of being able to do something monetizable. Not saying we can promise anything, but the idea of understanding the different marketplaces, the different mechanisms of how certain spaces function, as well as how you can be a part of it without being a coder, as well as not having to have the money to be a trader, and you could do things like offer services. Bottom line, that's a real thing going on in the metaverse spaces right now. And we also host, we're going to switch it for the month of September, the days that we do our Twitter space that talks about what digital realty means and what this whole no code wave is in the bigger picture of Web3. So if you're interested, definitely DM me. You can find the event itself on Eventbrite. That it will be the August 30th. And yeah, like we trying to put people on because things are about to definitely turn up when it comes to metaverses. And I don't think folks are really ready for what this no code wave means for Web3. Nonetheless, I am Trekk with 2Ks. This is Week in Crypto, brought to you here on The Gentleman of Crypto. And it's a Monday at this point now when you're listening to it. So I will say, have a P over B day. If that's not what you're doing as far as being productive, at least be in good company and be in a safe space. One.